All right, so now we need to talk about something called transport maximum. So we just went through how solutes are reabsorbed back into the blood from the proximal convoluted tubule. And they're moved back in with transporters. So there are a finite number of transporters. So what exactly does this mean? All right, so if we look at reabsorption rate, so we're looking at, we did glucose, so let's look at plasma glucose concentration. Plasma glucose concentration. All right, and the rate of reabsorption, or the rate of what we're doing. Okay, so we're going to look at actually a couple of things, not just reabsorption for this. So let's look at filtration first. So in filtration, we know there's no limit in filtration. Whatever's going to come out is going to come out. So the more glucose that you have in the plasma, the more you filter out, right? So the more you filter out, so the more it's going to be, the more that's going to be in the filtrate. Okay, so if we look at filtration, so we start with filtration. Here's glucose being filtered out. Again, is there a limit? No, there's no limit. Whatever's in there is going to come out. If it's there, it's going to be pushed out. Okay, so there's no limit to that. All right. So now let's look at reabsorption. So reabsorption rate, there is a limit. Okay, so there's no limit as far as the rate of filtration. It's just going to keep going. The reabsorption, there is a limit. And the limit is based on availability of the transporter. So transporter availability. So if we have reabsorption of glucose, so here it is happening, and it goes and goes and goes, and at some point, again, we just said there's a limit. So it comes up here, and there's a limit, and that limit is when the transporter runs out. There's no more transporters. And once that happens, we stop absorbing. Okay, so this is the transport maximum. So Tm is transport maximum. So we hit it right here. So we stop reabsorbing glucose and it stays in the filtrate. Okay. So what about excretion? Let's look at that excretion rate. Let's put that in green. Okay. So excretion rate. So so if this is glucose, so glucose has been filtered, it's now in the filtrate, and it's being reabsorbed in the proximal convoluted tubule. So is it coming out in the urine at this point? No, it's not in the urine. It's in the filtrate and then it's reabsorbed. But at this point, when the transport maximum occurs, now we start to find it in the urine. And that continues until we get transporters again. Okay, so if there's more glucose going into the plasma and there's no more transporters, we're going to pee more out. Okay, so at transport maximum, we start peeing out glucose. Okay, because it is staying in the filtrate. All right, glucose is staying or remaining in the filtrate. Okay, because there's still filtration going on. All right, we just don't have any more transporters. So this can happen to any of the solutes. Okay, that's going in this way. So with reabsorption, if we run out of the transporter, we get to transport max, then we'll see it in the urine. Okay, so if you have something like diabetes, that means you have a whole lot of glucose in the plasma, more than you should, higher than what would be normal. And the body's just getting rid of it now because there's not enough transporters to put it back in the blood, so it's just going to dump it out in the urine. Okay? So for glucose, that definitely occurs when there are abnormal amounts of glucose in the blood, as in diabetes. All right. So that's basically the proximal convoluted tubule and what happens there. And we know that the proximal convoluted tubule turns and goes into the loop of Henle. So now we need to talk about what happens in the loop of Henle.